What is rehab or rehabilitation? My name is Fred Bagares, a board-certified sports and spine medicine physician in Virginia Beach, Virginia. After 10 years of practice, I still find musculoskeletal medicine both fascinating and challenging. This podcast is about the lingering thoughts and questions I've had after residency and fellowship. My hope is to spark discussion, challenge dogma, and share my experiences in musculoskeletal medicine. Welcome to the Talking Rehab podcast. I was never a huge fan of running, even as a kid. Watching my kids currently play sports, I see some of these kids that can run for days. They just really enjoy running around the field. And I played sports growing up, but that was just never me. I absolutely hated running for the sake of running. Now, I would hustle and play my position, but outside of conditioning, I absolutely just hated running. However, I was pretty overweight growing up as a child, so between my 8th and 9th grade year, I decided to make a very conscious decision to lose weight and get back in shape. So I actually lost about 50 pounds over summer, so much to the point that when I came back in 9th grade, no one actually recognized me, which was an awesome feeling. But I utilized running and working out, lifting weights, things like that. But running was my main form of cardio, and it was super effective. I definitely got the results. So my relationship with running was always surrounding weight loss and just generally getting your heart rate up, getting your heart pumping, getting drenched in sweat. I liked the results of running, but the actual process, I just never really liked it. Just in general, I guess I should probably talk about the reasons why I didn't like running was, I found it kind of boring. I'd run in different environments, treadmill, outside, on the beach. And, I think the beach was a little bit more scenic, but, at the end of the day, I just didn't really find it really, I was kind of bored. I just didn't really like it. However, one of the main things that I never really achieved was that quote unquote runner's high. A lot of my friends would tell me that, just keep running. Eventually, you'll just kind of reach this runner's high. It'll be euphoric, and you'll just really enjoy it. And I just never really got there. And at one point, I was running every day, and I just never really got there. At some point, I stopped running, just based off of that experience. Was that, I had achieved my weight loss goal. I didn't really like it, but it was really effective, and I never got the runner's high. I had no real desire to, run a marathon or do any competitive running. So that again was not really a motivation, and I just stopped. Now that I'm older, I did give it a try again because running in the past has been one of the ways I've been able to maintain and lose weight. And as we all know and love, it's harder to stay healthy and keep weight down the older that we get. But when I tried running again, not only did I not like it, but it actually bothered my knees a lot more, which is kind of like a double negative again. But I restarted running again recently, and I wanted to kind of share what changed my mind about the whole experience. In my mid-30s, I started doing jiu-jitsu, which is a martial art that I absolutely love. I've always enjoyed martial arts, but jiu-jitsu has really become a big part of who I am. I just identify with so many things about it, and maybe that'll be a different episode. But jiu-jitsu, for what it is, from a cardiovascular standpoint, is really great for weight loss. Aside from it being fun, it is essentially a form of a high-intensity interval training. So when I first started out 10 years ago, I was training and rolling essentially 5 to 6 days a week. And for the folks that are not familiar with jiu-jitsu, rolling is essentially like sparring. I would equate it to similar but different to wrestling, but it is kind of that pace and that type of movement and energy. And it is a lot of fun. It is a great way to burn calories for sure. However, again, now that I'm older, aside from just the other responsibilities that I have, rolling 5 to 6 days a week is great if you can do it, but my body just simply can't really tolerate it anymore. particularly around 40 years old, I really noticed that my body started to change and respond differently to certain forms of exercise. So in addition to that, I've also been concerned about actually getting injured. The older that I've been getting, it's easier to get injured. I'm no longer the younger person in the room anymore. I don't recover as fast. I'm not as explosive as I used to be, but I am training with some of these like 20-year-old monsters. So, I do have to be concerned about getting injured from a professional standpoint, as a physician working with my hands, but obviously with my responsibilities as a husband and a dad. So cardio from about 20 to 30 years old was mainly running for me. But then from 35 and up until recently, it's been mainly jiu-jitsu. But again, for these reasons, I started wondering, is this a smart way for me to train? Certainly time on the mat does give me more mat experience, but it also increases the potential risk of injury. And if jiu-jitsu is my main form of cardio and I get injured doing jiu-jitsu, then I won't be able to participate in the sport that I love, and I won't get the cardio in. So I started looking again at different ways to get my workouts in. So I picked up rowing. I have a water rower at the house, which is a different exercise. It does get your heart rate up. I also have an air bike, which is great for a great pump. But I recently started running again. And even though I don't like the running, I started to do it again because it does have a lot of benefits. I'm a huge proponent of moving in all directions and stressing your body in different ways versus if I was strictly doing jiu-jitsu or strictly running. That's a great way to maintain your activity, but your joints and your body were really designed to do a lot of different things. Like life, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So I am a big believer in having different forms of exercise, different forms of movement. Your body tends to respond better to that long term. So I started running again recently, essentially to prepare myself for doing these rounds of rolling. The typical roll at my school is about 5 to 6 minutes long, and it's divided by 1 minute of rest. And so depending on the day, the rounds, there can be anywhere between 3 rounds to maybe like 6 or 7 rounds. So that's a pretty good workout. And I started to structure my workouts based on the rounds. So if I know that I have to be able to do a round of 5 to 6 minutes, I started designing my running workouts around 5 minutes. So I'm currently doing about 4 minutes of running and 1 minute of rest. I do that. I'm trying to do that maybe every other day because that, at least from a mental standpoint, the idea of rounds feels a little bit, my brain seems to like that a little bit better versus telling myself I have to run 25 minutes. Because when it comes to jiu-jitsu, I can do 3 to 5 rounds and be okay with it. But if you told me I had to run 25 minutes, I'd probably hate every minute of it. So again, maybe it's just like a little bit of a mental trick there. But I'm starting to slowly increase it to 5 to 6 minutes of work. And that gets into the other aspect of why I'm doing the running. I know that I don't like to run. I've never really liked it. However, what I've been starting to tell myself or ask myself is, can you do work for 4 to 5 minutes? So the way that I structure my workout is I have a Tabata timer, and I have 4 minutes of work with 1 minute of rest, and I create essentially 5 rounds. And so I run for 4 minutes, take a break for 1 minute, and the timer just kind of goes over and over and over for 5 minutes, and then I'm done. So what I'm really trying to do is build my mind around the simple question of, can you work for 4 minutes? I think this is a big barrier, not just in the jiu-jitsu realm, but in terms of exercise, rehabilitation, is can you do this activity for a certain amount of time? I remember in my earlier days of jiu-jitsu, sometimes you get stuck in a tough position and you want to quit. And when I was in those tough positions, I would ask myself, can you last 10 more seconds? Can you work for 10 more seconds? And I always could. Eventually the round would end and I would be fine. But, there's always these little moments where I was always looking for a mental way out. How can I get out of this? I knew I could last 10 seconds, but the thought of lasting the entire round was almost too much in the moment. And so from a rehabilitation standpoint, I think of it the same way. For some people, the thought of running for 25 minutes is unappealing. But can you work out for 4 minutes? Absolutely. If you do that multiple times, you eventually get to that 25 minutes. And while some people might say, well, that's not the same thing, you're running and walking. But at the end of the day, I'm still doing work in 25 minutes versus not. And for a lot of people, that mental barrier just prevents them from ever really getting started. Plus, I think we all need to care a lot less about what other people think about our overall progress. How I improve is how I improve. It may look different from everyone else, but we need to focus more on what we're trying to accomplish versus what other people think. So from my standpoint, running is not an activity I like to do, but I have somehow reframed it in my mind where it's something that I am able to do. I still don't necessarily like it, but my benefits and motivations are different now. The motivation is finding a different way to get my cardio in, structuring it in a way where it potentially could translate into a different sport that I actually like to do, which is jiu-jitsu. But more importantly, it's also challenging me mentally. It's giving me a different way to tackle some of these mental barriers that we all have. Everything can seem impossible, or we can always talk ourselves out of, big goals or even small goals. But if we can all find a way to change our relationship to it, and oftentimes that is mindset, we might actually start these goals happen. Long story short is, even though I don't like running, I do it because I see the benefit of it, not just from a physical standpoint, but also a mental standpoint. But it only really came about when I started to change how I approach a running type workout. Hopefully this helps you guys think about your day-to-day movement, and if you have any particular physical goals that you're afraid of trying or you have a mental barrier around starting, maybe if you start to change the mindset by approaching it in a different way with small attainable goals, getting started is much better than not starting at all. Thanks again for listening. Thank you for listening to the Talking Rehab podcast. I hope that this podcast stimulates you to question your own practice and how you approach rehabilitation. I truly appreciate your time and attention. If you enjoyed listening, make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. I wish you a movement-filled day. Take care.